All right, everyone. I am going to call this meeting to order at 3:05 p.m. But before we start off, we should start with a land acknowledgement. So the SFSS respectfully acknowledges its location on the unceded territories of Coast Salish people, including the Musqueam, Squamish, Tualatooth, Coquitlam, and Catsi nations. Unceded means that these territories were never handed over, sold, or given up by these nations, and we are currently situated in occupied territories. In terms of our next item on the agenda is roll call. So when I call your position, please state your name, your pronouns, and your access needs. I will start with myself. Hello, everyone. My name is Judith, she, her pronouns, and all my access needs are met. I will pass it on to the ex officio, who is not here. So I'm going to go to VP Finance.
Hi, everyone. I am here. My name is Abby. He, him pronouns, and all my access needs are met. Thank you.
All right. Mathematics counselor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ben. Pronouns are he, him, his, and all my access needs are met.
Psychology counselor.
Hi, my name is Mark. He, him, all my access needs are met.
Awesome. Society of Arts and Social Sciences. Hillary in the chat. Hi, it's Hillary. Pronouns are she, her, and all my access needs are met. But we'll be typing today as always. Awesome. Thank you for letting me know, Hillary. We can move on through 3.2 society staff. Policy, Research, and Community Affairs Coordinator.
Hi, everyone. BT here. Pronoun she, her, hers. My access needs are met.
Awesome. Thank you, Beauty. Our admin assistant. Rianne in the chat. Hello, my name is Rianne, she, her, and all my access needs are met. Awesome. Thank you for being here both. All right, we can move on to our consent agenda. The motion reads, be it resolved to adopt the consent agenda by unanimous consent. In our consent agenda, we go 4.1.1, which is matters arising from the minutes. And it is our governance minutes from last week, from our emergency meeting from July 11th. So I'm going to seek unanimous consent on this. If you wish to dissent, please raise your hand or indicate in the chat. Seeing no dissent, that carries unanimously. We can now move on to item number 5, which is the adoption of the agenda. The motion reads, be it resolved to adopt the agenda as presented. I will move. Can I get a second?
VP Finance.
I will give that to VP Finance. I will open up the floor for discussion. If you have any amendments to make the agenda, please list yourself in the chat. I will go first because I have some amendments I'd like to make given the situation we're in. I'm going to drop them in the chat. So I'm going to move to amend the agenda to add a new motion, which it will be 9.3. which the title of it is Appointment of Governance Committee Member to SO 5.1. The motion will read, whereas Governance Committee voted unanimously to create SO 5.1 Governance Appeals Board on July 11, 2022 of the Subcommittee of Governance Committee, whereas Section 5.1.6 of the subcommittee outlines that Governance Committee may appoint a member to sit on the subcommittee, be it resolved to appoint Councillor X to serve on SO 5.1 for the remainder of the council year. And then the second thing I want to add on is an in-camera discussion. Discussion item title is regulation issue semicolon PIPA. And then of course a move ex camera motion. All right, I move all these amendments as a batch. Can I get a second?
Math.
Math seconds. I will open up the floor for discussion. Seeing no discussion on this, I will call this to a vote. We'll seek unanimous consent. If you wish to dissent, please raise your hand or indicate in the chat. Seeing no dissent, that carries. We are now back to the main motion. The floor is still, which will now read, be it resolved to adopt the agenda as amended. The floor is open for discussion. Any amendments, any more questions, concerns? Seeing none, I will call this to vote. I will seek unanimous consent. If you wish to stand, please raise your hand or indicate in chat. Seeing none, that is carried as amended. we are now moving on to section 6 of the agenda, which is presentations. It's submitted by myself. I will promise to make this quick. This is in regards to our notice of motion tracker, and I will pull that up really quickly for those who have yet to see it, mostly because it's super pretty. As you can tell, my priorities are as always on point, and also because it's gonna help us hopefully to make sure we do not miss something, because this has happened before. Okay, so as some of you may know, because this has been an issue for a couple of weeks, if not months for me at this point, is that a lot of policy amendments kind of did not follow through after they were initially proposed, as in they were either a notice of motion on the website or on the council agenda or both, but they were never actually brought to council to be voted on, and it just died for weeks and months on end and never got picked up, and now they're outdated. So this is to ensure that we actually follow through the process and everything gets on the agenda, and we actually make sure that things get reconciled and added to the actual documentation on the website. As we already know, a lot of the policy on the website is outdated, mostly speaking to privacy information management, orientation and retention, finance policies. Those are the main ones, I would say, that are absolutely outdated and are not the copies we should be using. So this tracker is meant to ensure that we kind of follow through from point A to point B, and we actually get things on the website as they should be. It also helps us track to make sure thresholds aren't met. As you know, we have a 2-week threshold notice to membership. It needs to be on the website. It needs to be on the agenda. It needs to be voted on. Was it actually something that council approved? And if so, when was it? And to make sure we are actually going through it, this will also help us track as to how quickly we're moving in a sense. For example, we have, let's look at the censure policy correction, for example. This was approved by governance on June 20th, and it has been submitted to the council agenda on July 15th. So almost a month later, was it actually submitted to the agenda to be voted on. And we still don't know if it's going to get approved. But once it does, we will have the adoption date, and then we will have potential reconciliation date when we actually add it to the policy document and when it actually made it on the website. So it's going to be a process because of the 2-week threshold notice. It's probably expected that these reconciliation dates are going to be late, mostly because there are issues with majority of the policies document, and we do need to be relatively economic in terms of how many times are we going to ask BD to revise the same document, because there's going to be a lot, and majority of these are just typo fixes or formatting fixes, but it's still a lot of labor to go through all of it. But this will help us just keep on track and make sure that we don't forget to submit items that have met the notice period to the agenda, because they will not be, so we will not have put them to the notice period only for it not to be voted on and not to be adopted. So, but you can find this in your drive. It's shared with all of governance committee. These are hyperlinked. So the ones that aren't on the society website yet, when you click them, it will take you to the tracker document, which has the notices on it. The ones that are on society's website will take you to the actual sublink on the website. So that's usually how it's going to be. That's to ensure that you actually have access to the language of the notice, so you actually know what it is if you don't. Obviously, add them on here as you need to. Take them off from the list as you need to. Please add the dates. Yeah, so this should help us figure out what actually passes, how far we've gotten with something, and whether we actually adopted it. Obviously, I think it's time for us to mentally prepare ourselves that we might have no's in these columns. I don't expect everything that we push through to be approved by council as much as I would like it to. But that's something to keep in mind and just to keep in track to make sure we actually finish. Both through a review process and the update process, because there's a lot to do and I don't want us to get lost in the sea of Google Docs that at this point you have access to. So this will be probably the main area where you have access to basically what we have pushed through governance, through the notice, through council, was it reconciled? But yeah. Does anybody have any questions? If there aren't any questions, you should have access to this. If you don't, let me know. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen because that's it. It's not to give you a heads up. And then I guess we can move on to our next item on the agenda, which is new business. So there aren't that many things in new business, so we will wrap up really quickly, I expect. So we have 9.1. It is a council recommendation policy manual repealing process submitted by myself. The motion reads, be it resolved that governance committee formally recommends the adoption of the following changes to council manual repealing process clarification, whereas section 1.3 outlines the process and voter threshold to adopt different types of policies, whereas the repeal process and voter threshold is implicit but not clear in the policy. Be it resolved to amend section 1.3a of policy manual to add a subsection that reads 1.3 subsection A, subsection 1 to repeal a policy, which is a rule 2/3 threshold is required. Be it further resolved to amend subsection 3.b policy manual to add subsection that reads to repeal the above outlined policies, a simple majority threshold is required. I will move. Can I get this?
VP Finance.
Finance second. Just opening up the floor for discussion. This is something that was flagged to me like earlier this year. It's unclear if the same threshold is required to repeal policy as to establish one. We usually don't repeal policies pretty often. So there's only so many examples you can pull upon. And I think we should just have it clear cut, because the policy manual and we use it to establish policy and to change policy. I think we should spell it out what to do with policy that we want to get rid of. Especially because there are different thresholds for different types of policies. Like administrative policies, issues policies have different thresholds, as do normal rule policies do. So we should probably spell it out just in case. Because I don't want people to go around interpreting it one way or another, trying to establish that you need a 2/3 threshold to repeal all policies. I think it's the most common sense thing. If it was created by majority, it should be repealed by majority. If it was created by 2/3, it could be repealed by 2/3. I think it's reasonable. I think. Thoughts, questions? I know we discussed this last week, but. Okay. I will take your silence as there are no thoughts and there are no questions. So I will take this to a vote. I will seek unanimous consent if you wish to dissent. Raise your hand or indicate in the chat. Seeing no dissent, that carries unanimously. We can move on to 9.2, recommendation to council policy manual process for spelling and formatting adjustments. Submitted by myself. Which reads, be it resolved that governance committee formally recommends the adoption of the following changes to council. Policy manual, process for spelling and formatting adjustment. Whereas the policy manual outlines the process whereby society policies can be amended, whereas all amendments to policies are required to undergo the process outlined in section 1.2 and 1.3. Whereas the policy amendments can range from housekeeping changes such as spelling fixes and formatting and higher order concerns, whereas simple housekeeping changes do not alter the interpretation of policies, whereas enacting housekeeping amendments under the process of section 1.2 and 1.3 takes up unnecessary amount of time of the society and relevant committees. Be it resolved that council approves the addition of section 1.8 to the policy manual that reads as follows. 1.8, minor fixes that do not impact the intent or meaning of the policy may be updated by the Policy Research and Community Affairs Coordinator PRCA without process outlined in sections 1.2 and 1.3. These fixes are limited to spelling mistakes, formatting fixes, updating adoption dates when incorrect, renumbering when necessary. Subsection 1, notwithstanding sections 1.8C through D, the PRCA is required to submit a brief written report to council at the next available council meeting. Reporting set changes. And that's it. I will move. Can I get a second?
Math.
Nat will second. I will open the floor for discussion on this. So since I'm the first on the list, sorry, Ben, I beat you to the punch. As you may know from last week, I have a huge axe to grind with the fact that we need to pass notice of motions to remove an empty page that was there by accident in the policy document. As you may know, I would say at least 70% of our notice of motions are correcting typos and literally asking council to give us the authority to give BD the authority to press space between two words. I think that is that's the most ridiculous thing I have ever seen. The fact that we are spamming the council agenda to literally ask council that we can press enter or space is ludicrous. I have no words for this. We have some seriously weird typos that are actually kind of funny, but they still should be fixed because we are a multi-million-dollar organization and our policy should not be that messy and that incoherent. I think requesting council that they give us the authority to give BD the authority to press space is reasonable. I could be wrong here, but I think it's reasonable because we should not have to call weekly governance meetings to approve more and more and more notice of motions just so we can fix spelling mistakes. Because this is not changing the alteration of the policies. Like it's not changing the meaning. It's not changing it's not even fixing the grammar. We would still have to push through notice of motions to fix grammar. We would still have to push through notice of motions to change VP Finance to VP Finance and Services. That would still have to be going through us and through the sections of 1.2 and 1.3. But the amount of policies I sent off for consultation just up to this point to staff, where a majority, if not all the fixes, were correcting people's job titles to spelling mistakes, formatting mistakes. It's taking up unnecessary amount of time on our end and on staff's end as well, because they're expecting substantive like policy change, right? And what they're getting is us correcting typos. So how about we just do this? This is a very short list of powers that we're giving BD if she's willing to take it on. Quite frankly, I would give it to VP Internal, but I think it's politically a sour move. So probably better to give it to I guess, a nonpartisan staff member. So yeah, And of course, if you remember a policy or change in adoption date, that should be told to council, be like, hey, council, you guys gave us the wrong date. Here's the right date, it's fixed. Bye. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think the next person on the list was Ben. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I'm just gonna offer an amendment here to clarify one point or your proposal for 1.8D1. I'm gonna move to amend it to change the wording to this.
The PRC is required to submit a brief written report to council at the next available council meeting when changes are made by the section of 1.8C or 1.8D. Okay. I have no beef with that amendment. I will move that amendment. I will open up the floor for discussion on the amendment. Will there be discussion on the amendment? If there is no discussion on the amendment, I will call it to a vote. I will seek unanimous consent. If you wish to dissent, raise your hand or indicate in chat. Seeing no dissent, that amendment is carried. So now we're back to the main motion. And we are back to the main list. Abby, you're next on the list.
Thank you. Just going to make a quick comment. I think you summed it up pretty well, saying that we had to go to council to ask permission to hit backspace on a thing. I think that's quite an example of SFSS bureaucracy at its finest. So if we can cut down on that a little bit, I think that's to everyone's benefit, because then we're wasting less time on it, which is less hours spent and in turn less student money spent on useless crap. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ben, you're next on the list.
I want to say that I agree with Abby here. I think it's important that we try not to waste council's time with issues such as empty pages, correcting failed plagiarism of policies, or other issues like that. I'm in support of this here and will be in support of this at council, and we should pass this damn change.
All right, I am next on the list. Okay, so my concern is, because the committee knows I'm the one who submits the notice of motions to our communication staff, because I just simply spend more time because I'm an exec. If you look at our notice of motion subpage, we have so many. And if you look at how many of them are actually just correcting typos, it's ridiculous. I don't think it's sustainable to put that much like labor on our support staff. And I think it's quite frankly a bit insulting that we can't fix a typo without putting it through a 2-week notice process, because it's literally a typo fix. We were laughing about this last meeting, how we have to pass a motion to remove an empty page and to change male to meal. What? That should not be allowed, in my subtle opinion. And it's, I have issues with how we waste our time and our resources. And quite frankly, I'm surprised that council hasn't moved a motion yet to basically make governance committee shut up. But anyway, next person on the list is Beatty. Go ahead, Beatty.
Hello again. Thanks for bringing this up. Another perspective that I experienced last year that was related with this is because not all governance committee are passionate about policies. So that gives them, this situation gives them an opportunity to ignore, because anytime I tried to bring up policy edits as minor as just spacing, right? I'm discouraged because of the process. So then you can also just, use that as a way to advocate for them to approve this suggestion, because not all the time, not every year we'll have a passionate governance committee on policies, because it's more of, it's more subjective, and also it's more on what brought them to SFSS. So if policy changes didn't bring them to SFSS, then the PRCA is just left to go by the flow, which I think it's wrong. And that's why we're in this situation where we have a bunch of policies that needs to be edited. Just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Vidi. Honestly, yes. I think it makes everybody's job a bit easier. We just have policy which is properly spaced, which is properly formatted. It's so simple. I think we would not be pushing 15 to 20 motions per governance meeting if we would have the ability to just let you press enter or space. So I think we would have governance committee just concentrating and actually if something needs to be changed versus us just fixing typos, which I think that's what bothers me the most. Majority of these policy consultation documents that I sent out to staff so far really just have been us trying to fix what we already have because we're so busy fixing the grammar, the spelling, formatting, and all these things that we're not really like looking at it like, hey, is this logical? We are as much as we can, but majority of the time we are looking at it and just saying, how can we fix this language here? And majority of times it's just a missing space, weird formatting, having to renumber because for whatever reason, a subsection is missing. So it's not giving you superpowers, Speedy, but it is letting you press enter, which as of now, we're not allowed to do. I'm sorry, I'm laughing because it's so ridiculous. But yeah, that's just my subtle take on this. I don't know if anybody else cares to ramble on about this. I love this. I love this committee and the chat in this committee. Okay, if there isn't anybody who wants to share any more thoughts, I will take this to a vote. I will seek unanimous consent. If you wish to dissent, raise your hand or indicate in chat. Seeing that there is none, that will be carried as amended. All right, folks, that's good. We can now move on to our final new business item, which is 9.3, appointment of governance committee member to SO 5.1. The motion reads, whereas governance committee unanimously voted to create SO 5.1 governance appeals board on I swear I can read, July 11, 2022 as a subcommittee of governance committee. Whereas section 5.1.6 of the subcommittee outlines the governance committee may appoint a member to sit on the subcommittee, be it resolved to appoint Councillor X to serve on SO 5.1 for the remainder of the council year. I will move it. Can I get a second?
Math.
Math will second. So let's just open up the floor for discussion on this. I'll take the floor first. So many folks know that this subcommittee's purpose is to ensure that governance committee does not drown in unlimited amount of work. The purpose of it is to, if there is an issue, governance committee can just pass a motion to pass it on to the subcommittee, and the subcommittee can deal with whatever bylaw, policy, review, or appeal situation we have going on, allowing governance committee to just fix the policies and concentrate on the big picture issues, because we have plenty of those as is, given certain situations that have occurred in the past month or so, I think it's very crucial that this subcommittee starts getting to do things. And I think the first step of that is to ensure that it is elected. So we can start planning to what will go to the subcommittee, and we can allocate those issues as they come. But yeah, I just wanted to give that little preface. So I'm gonna, if anybody has any questions about this before I open it up for nominations. Oh, I also want to preface this. The committee composition, as many of you know, is VP Internal as chair, the president as an ex officio member, which will be used as a legal liaison, honestly. And then the vice chair of governance committee, and then one elected member from governance committee. Okay, any questions about this before I open it up for nominations? No questions? Cool. I will open this up for nominations. This is the first call for nominations. Ben.
I'll nominate myself.
All right, cool. Second call. Third call. All right, cool. Given that nobody else wishes to nominate themselves, congratulations, Ben, you are going to be part of the subcommittee. So I'm going to move to amend the main motion to strike Counselor X and replace it with Ben Tischler. Can I get a second?
Math.
Finance.
Math seconds. I will open up the floor for discussion on the amendment. Seeing no discussion, I will take it to a vote. I will seek unanimous consent. If you wish to consent, please raise your hand or indicate in chat. Seeing no dissent, that amendment is carried. So now the full motion, the amended motion, will now read, whereas Governance Committee voted unanimously to create SO 5.1 Governance Appeals Board on July 11, 2022 as a subcommittee of Governance Committee. Whereas Section 5.1.6 of the subcommittee outlines that Governance Committee may appoint a member to sit on the subcommittee, be it resolved to appoint Ben Tischler to serve on SO 5.1 for the remainder of the council year. Okay, floor is open for discussion. Seeing no discussion, I will take it to a vote. I will seek unanimous consent. If you wish to dissent, raise your hand or indicate in chat. Seeing that there is no dissent, that is carried unanimously. And that brings an end to our new business today. We will now be moving on to our discussion items. Our first discussion item being policy review check-in. All right, folks. As you may know, we have now moved on to our next stage of our policy review. We have moved on to finance policies and communications policies. And we have already already discussed communications policies briefly last week, but now that we're officially reviewing it, I did want to flag it to the committee, given the fact that now it's up for review, and there were concerns raised to me specifically about communications policies and how it interacts with individuality of executives. So we're going to bring that up, but we can probably, full disclosure, I am really sorry to those who were forced to do their reviews last minute. I'm sorry I sent it out like what, Saturday? I was supposed to send it on Thursday, proceeded not to. My bad. I'm sorry. Sorry, Ben. Specifically to Ben, because I think he's the only one who actually completed his reviews. So, sorry. Yeah, I'm gonna let Ben take the floor.
Okay, so first, for anyone watching this recording, I do want to clarify what my failed plagiarism joke was about earlier. So in FP15, What evidently happened is that somebody, I don't know who, copied the old R17 from the board policies to finance policy, changed the title to FP15, but kind of forgot to change the rest of it, like the numbering or the policy type, stuff like that. FP12, the issue there is that whoever wrote the policy said that the levy came into effect in October of 1989. It came into effect in September of 1989. In FP11, just some minor clarification I want to make there to delete departmental in front of the words student unions, because arguably the language is so broad anyways, it doesn't really matter. FP4, in my view, needs a large rewrite because it doesn't take into account this thing called a preliminary budget. FP2, originally FP2 in the policies adopted in June of 2020 appears to have made reference to the PRCA, but then in the new policies adopted in April of 2021, for some reason that was changed back to the CPRC. For whatever reason, that needs to be changed back. In terms of FP1, we will need to change it. Still waiting to hear back from VP Finance as to whether it's a small issue or a big issue. And communications policies, CMP4 is fine. CMP6, we literally need to change G to F. Judith, you're on mute.
I clicked too quickly. This is a cursed meeting. But what I was meant to say is I did get to go through the communications policy that I signed up for. There isn't anything wrong with them. That's what I want to start off by. We don't have egregious numbering issues. We don't have awful typos. Arguably, the formatting is pretty nice on this as well. It's one of those kind of policies that actually seems pretty well put together. So I have no comment on it in terms of it being poor. I think it's great, actually. I think there are just some minor grammar fixes we could apply, but even those aren't super necessary, I would say. I think something worthwhile maybe putting into communications policy, and I think that will be dependent on the communications department's take as well, would be in regards to unofficial communications from council members and how that works in relations to the society communications. Maybe discussing as to how we disperse our logos and how that works and who can use our logos for what purpose and how we use them. I know a while back there were guidelines about using our logos as onto every printed advertisement for every club and group and stuff that falls under us. That's no longer really a thing that we do, unfortunately, and I think it'd be valuable to bring it back, but that's just something open up for interpretation. As to the finance policies, I have not gone around to them. I have looked at them, and I think I will need to bug the VP Finance as to whether this is still a thing yet or not. Majority of it doesn't sound like it is, and that's worrisome. And I think we'll be spending a long time on the finance policies. A very, very long time. That's just my personal take on this. Speaking of, does the VP Finance care to comment?
At this moment in time, the VP Finance does not care to comment. Check with me in 2 weeks or whenever the next governance committee is. And based on precedents, it might even be next week at this point because we've been passing so many motions.
I promise not to call any more emergency meetings unless absolutely necessary. But yeah, hopefully we wrap those up and be able to start drafting some ideas up by next governance meeting, which I did not put out the call for agenda items. That's the first. Sorry, folks. Thank you for reminding me. That's so subtly, Abby. All right, yeah, go ahead, Ben.
This is not related to ones we're currently working on, but on property management policies, we need to add the word "and."
Noted, okay. Is there any more discussion on this item? If not, we can move on to 10.2, which is consultation feedback submitted by myself. So, as y'all know, because you're CC'd on those emails, I'm sure you've been loving getting CC'd on those emails. I have sent out some consultation folders to relevant staff as to policies before we do anything to them at council. Mainly corporate information management stuff, because it's not great. That policy is just not great. And I don't think it's been updated in 2 years. So I sent out that folder with our changes in it. For whatever reason, when I copied the docs, the changes did not come with it. So I had to do it. That took an hour or so, but it's fine. But those are sent out. In terms of feedback, I have received some feedback from the relevant staff. No one has any issues with it, which arguably is interesting because that's the one that we're changing the most on. Obviously, we have the typical issue of people not being able to remember BD's role and calling her everything but her actual role. So a lot of correction of that. I think there's like 15 corrections in that policy document, just correcting that BD is the policy research and community affairs coordinator. There's also some, I think, some typos. There is something that I think was copy and pasted from a document and nobody caught it in regards to who calls council meetings, which is the president, not the operations organizer. So that's getting removed. Anyway, so a couple of things to be shifted around. Yes, Ben, there's a section in corporate management where it says the operations organizer is responsible for scheduling council meetings. Don't ask me why, but it's there. So people seem to be okay with it. Not many comments were made on it. The only difference is, I think, the chart on, I think in the first policy, CIP1, yeah. There's a chart in it, and for whatever reason, it's not really representative of our governance model. So that's getting updated, mostly to give some roles some writing access and some viewing access, because they don't, even though it's in bylaw that we should. But like I said, no staff raised a red flag about it. They seem to be cool with it, which is fine. In regards to, what's the other one? Orientation and retention. Nothing. Either no one has comments or nobody cares. So yeah, I can start sending out the rest. I know we didn't make any substantial changes to member services, but I'll send out a folder about that too, to member services. But from what I can tell, nobody has any thoughts or comments, and it makes sense because most of our changes that we're proposing is housekeeping changes and just making sure that our policies reflect who's doing what, because I think our policies existed before the rules existed, and now looking at it, it doesn't make sense. But yeah, I know you guys are on a chain of emails, so you've probably seen the responses too, and the response is but yeah, does anyone have questions, thoughts? No? Okay. All right, cool. Well, I will continue sending out the folders and we will probably continue not really getting any responses. So we can move on to item 11 on the agenda, which is moving in camera. So the motion reads, be it resolved to move in camera for the remainder of the meeting. I will move. Can I get a second?
Math.
Matt seconds. Opening the floor for discussion. Seeing no discussion, I'll take it to a vote. I'll seek unanimous consent. If you wish to dissent, raise your hand or indicate in chat. Saying no dissent, that carries. I will pause the recording and we will be back soon. All right, folks, we are now back to the main room. So the next motion on our agenda is to move X camera. The motion reads, be it resolved to move X camera for the remainder of the meeting. Can I get a mover?
VP Finance.
VP Finance moves. Can I get a second?
Math.
Math seconds. I will open the floor for discussion. Seeing no discussion, I guess. I will take it to a vote. I will seek unanimous consent. If you wish to dissent, please raise your hand or indicate in the chat. Seeing no dissent, that carries. We are now back to X camera. So the last item on our agenda is adjournment. The motion reads, be it resolved to adjourn this meeting at 4:58 p.m. I will, whatever, yeah, go ahead, Abby.
Sorry, we have an announcement, I believe. Unless I'm looking at the wrong agenda. Do we have a 14.1?
Did people read out the announcements? Okay, all right, if you want to do announcements, that's item number 14, I guess. 14.1, notice of motion sub-page on the SFSS website. We have a sub-page, folks. Thanks to the comments team for making us one. We have a lot of notice of motions on there. It's great. But yeah, thoughts, concerns? No, the notice page is linked there. You want to go check it out for yourself if you haven't already. Now we're going to go to adjournment. Last item on the agenda, which still reads be resolved to adjourn this meeting at 4:58 p.m. I will move. Can I get a second?
Math.
Math second. I will open the floor for discussion. There is none. I will take it to a vote. I will seek unanimous consent. If you wish to dissent, please raise your hand or indicate in chat. Seeing no dissent, that motion is carried. We are adjourned. Thank you everyone for coming out. I will now pause the recording.